When Rebecca Cutler recently made the decision to cancel Joy Reid's show as well as the jobs of Joy's staff along with other hosts of color, she insisted in subsequent interviews that Donald Trump did not play a role in her decision-making. But is Rebecca's public statement concerning her decision-making in the current presidential administration true? Let's talk about it. According to Nielsen data obtained by the Daily Beast, after the election, all shows at MSNBC declined in viewership. However, Joy Reid's show was among those who lost the least amount of viewership, and in various viewership categories, Joy Reid actually beat out Ari Melber, Chris Hayes, and Jen Psaki. So then what is behind Rebecca Coulter terminating nearly every non-white public-facing person at the network? It is important to note that MSNBC is a subsidiary organization under the larger corporate umbrella of Comcast. It is a part of the NBC Universal News Group, which itself is a subsidiary of NBC Universal. During the 2024 election cycle, records reflect that the top two executives at Comcast and NBC, Brian Roberts and Mike Cavanaugh, as well as Mike Cavanaugh's wife, Emily, contributed a generous amount of money to both the Internet and Television Association Political Action Committee and the Comcast Corporation and NBC Universal Political Action Committee as well. Both political action committees during the 2024 election cycle overwhelmingly contributed to Republicans. In other words, as primetime hosts like Joy Reid were critiquing a yet-to-come second Trump presidency and his proposed policies, those at the top were donating to super PACs, which backed both the political office campaigns and legislative efforts of rank-and-file Republicans and, by extension, Donald Trump. As this took place, Comcast, led by Brian Roberts, fueled Republican efforts by donating to Steve Scalise and the Republican National Committee. He also made sure that Comcast donated to the Truth and Courage Political Action Committee, which was a PAC established to make sure that Ted Cruz was re-elected to the Senate. This means, as it became clear during the election cycle, that the House and Senate races would be close and more than likely in favor of Republicans, efforts were taken by Comcast to ensure that nail-biting races such as that between Ted Cruz and Colin Allred would turn out in their favor. And Comcast executives had a good reason to take part in the pay-for-play parlor. On November 20th, 2024, after the election results had came out, Comcast announced that it was creating a separate media entity by spinning off its existing television networks into a publicly traded company. Its networks that were to be spun off were USA Network, Oxygen, E!, Sci-Fi, the Golf Channel, CNBC, and MSNBC. Such a process can be prevented, helped, or delayed by legislative efforts in the House and Senate, and most importantly, by the president. An example, in 2017, when AT&T made efforts to acquire Time Warner, Donald Trump took aggressive steps to stop the merger, including ordering Gary Cohn, former National Economic Council director, to inform the Justice Department to block the merger. Trump also reportedly complained to his then Chief of Staff, John Kelly, saying, quote, "I've been telling Cohn to get this lawsuit filed and nothing's happened. I've mentioned it 50 times and nothing's happened. I want to make sure it's filed. I want that deal blocked." End quote. The reason why Trump wanted the deal blocked was, in his own words, quote, "AT&T is now trying to buy Time Warner, and thus the wildly anti-Trump CNN. Donald Trump would never approve such a deal." End quote. Interestingly, as Donald Trump sought to stop AT&T, a larger deal between Disney and 21st Century Fox, the parent company of Fox News, went through without delay. In so many words, networks as well as their hosts who fact-check and or critique Donald Trump can expect their business dealings to be delayed and or wholly prevented. While AT&T did eventually win its cases against Trump via the Justice Department, the delay cost both time and money that Comcast would like to save. Interestingly, as AT&T sought out to acquire Time Warner and thereby CNN, what eventually came about was CNN Plus. Its senior VP and head of programming was Rebecca Cutler. As the head of programming, the success of CNN Plus depended upon the programming decisions of Rebecca. Interestingly, CNN Plus launched in March of 2022. By April of 2022, CNN Plus was canceled due to a lack of subscribers, lackluster content, as well as very few deals to carry the platform, among other reasons. In other words, in her role at CNN Plus, Rebecca demonstrated that she does not have the skill set to pull together effective programming to engage audiences, generate revenue, and sustain a network. Yet she was named CEO of MSNBC and began making cuts that are unsubstantiated by the data or viewer preferences, but placates and maps onto the political moves of both Comcast and NBC executives, to whom she reports, who themselves in turn are informing their decisions with the present administration in mind, namely Donald Trump. That Comcast and Time Warner executives would be intentional about pumping money into the coffers of both Steve Scalise and Ted Cruz is no coincidence. Steve Scalise is the House Majority Leader overseeing congressional processes and legislation. Ted Cruz is the chair of the Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation, in which the legislative efforts of the Subcommittee for Telecommunication and Media are negotiated in advance. The same committee that has the capacity to have a significant impact on the efforts of Comcast to create a separate public trading entity for its new organization. Coincidentally, when Joy Reid's show was dropped, among the first celebratory tweets sent out was from Ted Cruz. Comcast's appeal to Trump is further punctuated not only by the termination of nearly all of its non-white hosts, it is further cemented by the $1 million which Comcast donated to Donald Trump's inauguration. Looking at the big picture, Rebecca's capitulation to the larger moves made by Comcast and NBC executives is seemingly a move to keep her secure in a role her resume demonstrates she is not qualified for. At the same time, it is seemingly the case that Mark Lazarus, the incoming CEO of the spin-off company from Comcast, handpicked Rebecca Cutler precisely because she will not question the direction of the news organization and is bending to the ego of Donald Trump, even if she is the DEI hire. She is all too willing to do the axing work in the name of potential profits, corporate expansion, and pleasing executives, who in turn would much rather position Comcast in Donald Trump's, Ted Cruz, and Steve Scalise's favor rather than challenge the obvious existential political predicament. Even if Rebecca refuses to acknowledge the influence of Donald Trump in her new role, those whom she reports to makes it all too obvious and all too clear. I'll see you next time. Peace.